What's the barrier that's standing in front of you right now? It could be fear. It could be doubt. It could be the unknown. It could be something external, something internal. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you to take that first step. Don't wait for everything to be perfect because it's never going to be perfect. Don't wait for the right moment because the right moment is whenever you decide to start. Breaking barriers is not about the end result. It's about the process. And I say this all the time, whether it's on Mile 40 or on other podcasts that I speak on. It's not about the finish line. It's about showing up day after day, even when the path ahead is unclear. You don't need to know all the answers to take that leap. You don't need to trust that every step you take is bringing you closer to where you're meant to be. And that's the important thing. Hey, Mile 40 fam. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by the leaders in male grooming at Manscaped. They're helping us spice up the hair care regimen on our heads with something fresh. No, it's not a new razor. It's not ball deodorant. Get ready for the game-changing new Scalp Buffer by Manscaped. Let's break down why you need to add this bad boy to your hair care routine. First things first. Check out these thick silicone bristles. They're 100% antibacterial. No more germs hitching a ride on your head. The bristles gently exfoliate your scalp, and the product helps reduce flaking caused by dry skin and buildup. The bristles enhance shampoo penetration for more foam and less product juice. It's not just about feeling good. A better lather means better cleaning power. You can also pair it with the 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner from Manscaped for the ultimate hair care routine. These products are designed to work together, giving your hair the nourishment and strength it needs. Simply put, the Scalp Buffer is your scalp's secret weapon. Its antibacterial silicone bristles keep your scalp healthy, maximizes shampoo performance, gives you a soothing massage, kicks bacteria to the curb, and stores away like a champ. Take your scalp from zero to hero with the Scalp Buffer. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code MILE40 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code MILE40 at manscaped.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of Mile 40 Podcast. We are on episode 99 of the show. Very, very exciting stuff. I want to thank you all for continuing to tune in. I am very, very grateful for your support, your reviews, your feedback, everything that's been coming down the pipe. I could not be doing any of this without you guys. And so I just want to say thank you. Today's episode is going to be another solo episode on the back of the feedback that you guys gave from the first one, where I discussed some of the learnings of fatherhood. I decided to incorporate this a little bit more for multiple reasons. I do like the mixing up of formats. I think these solo episodes are a little bit more quick hit. And so if you're looking for a shorter listen, this might be the kind of episode for you. I'm also hoping that by sharing a little bit more about my own personal reflections and takeaways, I will empower you, the audience, to walk away from this show a little bit more empowered with reflections on overcoming your own obstacles, or embracing things outside of your comfort zone, and really going into that zone of growth mode. And that's my hope through these solo episodes. Just some quick housekeeping items. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Also, check out the show notes. Pick up a copy of Audacious Break Barriers. If you buy them from my website, www.bishoytadros.com, I will sign them and personally mail them to you myself. This episode is a special episode because it marks the 5-year anniversary of a milestone, the release of my book, Break Barriers. It's right here. If you're looking on YouTube or on Spotify video, um, look at the mean mug on that face. Quick story about that. When we were writing this book, I had, gone up and down the aisles at the bookstores. I was looking at similar genres. And one of the things that we realized at the time was smiles don't sell. And so, now 5 years later, I look at this guy and I ask myself, why so serious? But that was the learning. Smiles don't sell. So we did not smile on the cover. Now, back to the focus of this episode. I want to take a moment to reflect on the journey, the lessons learned, and really what it means to break your own barriers. When I first set out to write the book, it wasn't about creating something to put on a shelf or patting myself on the back. And, I really will dive into this. It really wasn't about book sales either. Because quite frankly, I had no literary background. I didn't know if the book was going to sell. I was, I had very low expectations. It was about something deeper. It was a drive to confront the obstacles that I was facing, to share those experiences with others. And today, as I look back on that journey, I realize that breaking barriers isn't just something that we do once. It's a never-ending journey, essentially, right? There is no finish line. And I've said that several times on not only this episode, but other podcasts that I've been on. Life is always going to present us with new challenges. And each time we have the opportunity to push through them, to grow, to discover more about ourselves. And one of the biggest takeaways from the past 5 years isn't really the book itself, it's the fact that I took that first step without knowing where it would lead. And I feel like that's such an important topic to discuss because a lot of us are afraid to take that first step because we're not sure where it's going to go with many of the things that we want to do in life. At the time, this was in 2018, winter of 2018. I was at a career crossroads. I was in banking for 6 going on 7 years at that point. I was not going to say I was checked out, but I was not really that motivated at that point because I was really frustrated by the fact that, especially living in New York, a lot of your identity was tied to your career. And it wasn't a career that I was particularly pumped about having tied to my identity at that point. I felt like I had more to offer the world. I knew I had a story to tell, but I wasn't sure how I was going to tell it. I didn't actually know if anyone was going to care, like I was saying earlier. What I did know though was that if I took that leap, if I didn't at least try, I'd always wonder, what could have been. And like I said, that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? Waiting for the right time, for the perfect set of circumstances, for the confidence that we have everything figured out. But life doesn't work like that. The right time rarely comes, it may never come. And if you're waiting for all the answers, you may never start. And taking that first step, even when you don't know exactly where it will lead, is the key to breaking barriers. When I started writing the book, I didn't have a blueprint. I had no idea what I was doing. I was sitting at my desk. I Googled how to write a book. I also Googled how many words you need to write to reach 100 pages. That's how little I knew about the process. I didn't know how much it was going to cost, how to publish it, how to market it, or if anyone was going to buy it. But I knew that I had to start somewhere. And the truth is that imperfect action is better than no action. It's better to take a small, uncertain step than to remain stuck, to wait for the stars to align. And for me, each word that I wrote, every late night edit, every moment of doubt, it was all part of the process. And it's the same for whatever goal you're working toward, essentially. The path is rarely clear at the beginning, and you're not supposed to have all the answers. And what matters, essentially, is that you're willing to move forward despite the uncertainty. And I draw a lot of parallels between basically anything and running a marathon. But it's really very similar in the fact that it's all about just putting one foot in front of the other, not knowing where it's going to take you in terms of when you're going to get to that finish line. And that fortitude is really um, parallel across the board with whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So I Googled, like I said, how many words it you have to write to get to 100 pages, and it was 20,000 words. And I remember bringing my laptop to work at the time. My boss was in Houston. I was in New York. I would take my lunch break. I would start typing away. And in about 3 months, I hit that 100 pages. And it was just a long Microsoft Word document. Did not know what to do with it. I reached out to a friend who's actually been on the show. Shout out Eric Posner. He ran a business in New York, and I felt like he had a good network. And I asked him if he knew anyone who published a book, and he did. He introduced me to his friend. Shout out Cody Royal, who had published. And Cody looked at my Word document, and he said, this is pretty good. Do you mind if I give you my editor?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. I mean, heck, I had no idea. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what an editor were to cost. I didn't know if the editor was going to tear it all up. I mean, honestly, I had already taken that first step, so I felt like I had even less to lose. And that editor ultimately ended up being a godsend. He ended up being more than just an editor. He ended up becoming a friend, a therapist, someone that I could really trust with some of my deepest and most personal stories. Because, as you know, if you've read Break Barriers, it's really, a deep dive into what was going on in my mind during some of my my darkest experiences. And so, off the bat, I want to share one of the key lessons that Frederick, my editor, had taught me. Frederick Haugen. Um, I gave him the Microsoft Word document, and he looked at it and reviewed it. And he came back to me, and he was pretty frank. He said, "Look, your content is good, but I want to teach you something that you probably didn't think about." And he said, "You can have the best content in the world, but if you don't give the reader a reason to flip the page from the first page to the last page, then you don't have a book. You just have a lot of good content on paper." And that really resonated with me because I felt like I had a lot of good content, but I understood that I did not know how to write a book. So then he gave me another exercise. He told me to find 40 flashcards and to write the 40 most important moments of my life, one on each flashcard. And then following that, during our next meeting, his assignment was, "I want you to write 1,000 words for each of those 40 moments." So now I was going from 20,000 words to 60,000 words essentially. And once that was done, that's when the real book writing journey started. And he had helped me at that point put the pieces together in a way that was cohesive for people to want to flip the page. And as I reflect on the past 5 years, one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is that resilient is built in the moments where things feel uncertain. Writing Break Barriers wasn't always easy. There were nights I questioned every chapter, paragraph, wondering if the message was coming through or if it was even worth finishing. But I kept going. And not because I had it all figured out, but because I believed that pushing through the discomfort would lead to something meaningful. And ironically, like, I do believe things happen for a reason. It was only after that I had my mile 40 moment, or that after I ran that first marathon, that I decided to take the leap into writing this book. And I think by going through those moments, those difficult moments, and coming out on the other side, I was starting to learn that I can do hard things, and I could do hard things on different fronts. And that's the message, or amongst many of the messages, that I want to share with you all today. When you're pursuing something that matters to you, whether it's a new career, personal goal, creative project, there's always going to be moments of doubt. There's going to be times where you feel like the finish line is too far away, or that you're not making progress. But resilience isn't about having it all figured out. It's about continuing to show up even when it's hard, even when you're unsure, right? Like, if you read Audacious, there was a whole chapter on resilience. And so while the focus of today's Break Barriers, clearly you can see the theme stuck still well beyond it. And it's funny to look back. A couple of things that if it wasn't for this episode that we're doing today, I wouldn't really get a chance to reflect on. But when I first shared my story, right, it was in 2017. I was running my first marathon. I needed to raise money for charity. I actually didn't think anyone was going to read it, pay attention to it. I thought I was going to raise all the money. I was going to pay all the money out of my pocket. But I remember being very intentional about sharing the story. And when I wrote it for that fundraiser, I titled it, "The Comeback is Always Greater Than the Setback." It was a phrase that just always kept coming back to me. It's whenever I saw it on like any motivational reel or photo, or At that time, Instagram was starting to really, really, gain traction, and the people that was following, were pushing forward messages like this. And a funny thing is that actually almost became the title of the book, because it encapsulated not just my story, but a universal truth that no matter how many setbacks you face, there's always a comeback waiting for you on the other side. And it's just about you being willing to push through. And that's the heart of Break Barriers. It's not about the book itself, but about the mindset of pushing beyond what you think is possible, of challenging yourself to go further than you ever have before. And honestly, there's something in that statement that I want to make clear. You don't need to go much further than you've ever been before, but it's about going just one step further than you did the last time. And that one step is really all that you need, to realize that you're capable of more than you're currently giving. And as I reflect on the last 5 years, what I want to leave you with today is, what's the barrier that's standing in front of you right now? It could be fear, it could be doubt, it could be the unknown, it could be something external, something internal. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you to take that first step. Don't wait for everything to be perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. Don't wait for the right moment, because the right moment is whenever you decide to start. Breaking barriers is not about the end result, it's about the process. And I say this all the time, whether it's on Mile 40 or on other podcasts that I speak on. It's not about the finish line. It's about showing up day after day, even when the path ahead is unclear. You don't need to know all the answers to take that leap. You don't need to trust that every step you take is bringing you closer to where you're meant to be. And that's the important thing. I can't really pound this message home enough, but reflecting on the last 5 years, yes, I can say it's been awesome having this book out. I'm really proud of this book. I'm grateful for this book. I'm thankful for all the support, for all the people who've bought the book. It surpassed, all of my expectations. But the beauty of the book was actually in the 9 months it took for the book to be written, because that 9 months was some of the deepest introspection that I had ever done in my entire life. And I remember the late nights with my editor, you know, going back and forth on whether or not we should keep something in, whether or not it fit the storyline, whether or not it was too personal, whether or not, it really made sense, and if it would resonate with people. Um, and looking back on it now, that was the beauty of it all. And I tell people, like, even if you're running marathons, like, the beauty isn't actually in crossing the finish line. It's in what you learn about yourself on those lonely days on the track when no one else is training with you and you're out there by yourself and you finish, your difficult speed work exercise. That is the moment that counts. And that is where you find what you're made of. um and it's similar with this process. That's really where I learn the most about myself. And looking back, I'm incredibly grateful for every step of the journey, not because it was easy, because it taught me so much about resilience, about pushing through doubt, about the power of simply starting. And now, celebrating 5 years, I hope it serves as a reminder that you're capable of so much more than you think. The barriers in front of you are only temporary, but the growth that you're going to experience by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations will stay with you forever. I want to thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Thank you for your continued support. If today's episode inspired you, I want you to reach out to let me know. I'd love to hear your story. I want to know what your barriers are. I want to push forward with you. And I really want to, encourage you to realize that the one thing that unifies us all, and essentially the main the main essence of this show, Mile 40, and the book, was my realization that no matter who you are, no matter what your background, no matter what it is, you know, that you have as your current circumstance, the one thing that unifies us all as humans is that we all have our obstacles. And I remember being very intentional about that as I was writing Break Barriers. I told my editor specifically, I said, I do not want this book to be geared toward marathon runners. I don't want this book to be geared toward cancer patients. I don't want this book to be geared toward immigrants assimilating or anyone who had faced any sort of adversity in childhood. I want this book to be written in a way where no matter who picks it up, no matter who reads it, they identify with the fact that as humans, we all have obstacles. And as humans, there's a path to overcoming those obstacles. And there's nothing more beautiful than looking at the power of a personal comeback over a series of setbacks. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Thank you for your continued support, for being a part of the Mile 40 family. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait to hear from you. And I will leave you with this. We are approaching episode 100, and I am so thankful for your continued journey, your continued ride on this journey. It's my hope that you stick along with the show, and I can't wait to see you on the other side of 100.